All right, so my name is Bria Heiner. I'm a admissions specialist from Utah State University. I'm located here in Colorado, and yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys today about aviation and Utah State and the different options that you have. So, Tina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. I wish we could be there to see you guys in person. I was so sad when the Aspen Fair was um, shifted to virtual, understanding, of course, but it is absolutely my favorite time of the year to be out there. So that said, my name is Tina Barr. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So today we're here to just help guide you guys through what I personally think is the most complicated degree that there is in any discipline. That said, we're going to keep it pretty casual today. So please know there are 3 different ways to ask questions. You guys are welcome to type it in the chat. If you click on participants next to your name, there's a little icon that says raise hand, so you can do that. And then within the chat, if you're not comfortable or you prefer a little bit more privacy, you don't have to direct it to everybody. You can direct it to either myself or Bria. So those are 3 different ways to ask us questions during this. We don't have necessarily like a formal presentation for you guys today. We just really wanted you guys to get a chance to ask us any questions. If you guys have any questions to start off with.
Hi, sorry, I don't really know where like the raise hand button is.
Oh, that's
But
fine. Yeah, you can take yourself off mute too. We're a small group here. We can
all
keep
right.
it casual.
But I'm Andrea Nichols, and I was just wondering, like, what got you into aviation in the first place?
Ria, do you want to start this? Do you want me to? For me, I kind of had a very weaving path to aviation. So for myself, like I love being able to help kind of go out and recruit the next pilot generation. And also just, obviously there are so many other aspects to aviation as well. So for those of you joining us today, of course, there's the commercial airline pilot track. There are also aviation business pathways. You can also build the planes. You can also redesign the planes. So there are a lot of different options as far as the aviation goes. For me personally, I'm actually a lot more passionate about the psychology behind it. So my degree is in industrial and organizational psychology, which is kind of like why people make the choices they do in those moments. Has to do with a lot of accident investigation. So a kind of a different pathway than maybe your standard commercial airline pilot, but that's what's so interesting about the aviation world. There's so many different aspects to it. That said, I still can't help myself when I'm walking through one of our campuses. Every time I see a plane in the air, I have to just stop and look up. And sometimes I forget to stop and then I'll trip while I look up. So that said, if you cannot help but look up at the sky when you see a really cool plane flying by, that's definitely when you know that aviation is a great pathway for you.
I actually am not in aviation. So our university is really big. We have 156 programs and aviation is one of those programs. And so I get to talk about aviation and tell students how cool it is and learn myself as I go. But I actually got my degree in journalism of all things. So so aviation is not in my wheelhouse. I didn't take classes or do anything. I fly on planes, like all of us do, but I actually didn't get my degree in aviation. So yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? Or if not, we can kind of go over some common questions that we do get around aviation, as well as just some good things to know. That said, while you guys are contemplating any questions you might have, Andrea, I will share one more quick story with you. I can say that one of the reasons I found out about this university, without delving too long of a story, I met a flight instructor in Shanghai that told me about this school. And so I'm going to share his story because I think it's funny, but he's always been really passionate about planes. And actually the first time he ever flew, He went on a discovery flight, which is definitely something very beneficial to do if you think there's any interest at all around flight. You can find a local flight school and sign up to do a discovery flight. So that way you know ahead of time if that is something that you are really passionate about before trying to commit 4 years of your life to it. That said, the very first time he went up, he actually got very sick, and he opened the window, and he had glasses on his face, just like Bria and I do right now. And the glasses went, woo! And yet somehow he still knew in that moment that that was what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. Bria, it looks like we did get one more question. Says, I want to be a commercial pilot, and the student is currently working with an aviation program in the Aspen School District on his way to his private pilot's license. She wants to know all the ways to becoming an airline pilot. That's a great question. Bria, do you want to start with this?
Sure. Actually, no, you should start. You should start, and I'll tag on if I have anything to add.
No worries. Okay, so I definitely recommend to my students, especially in the Colorado area, that it is very beneficial to work on your private pilot's license before starting school. It can save you a lot of money. And again, it just kind of continues along that pathway of making sure this is something that you really want to do before committing to 4 years of your life. So when you're working on your private pilot's license, that is the first rating. So there are traditionally about 4 ratings that are included along the commercial airline track or degree program. So that said, after your private pilot's license comes the instrument rating, then you have your commercial single. And then for us, and Bria, please let me know what it is for your school. For us, you have the choice on your 4th degree. You can either do the commercial multi or your CFI rating. So that's a choice for you guys. The commercial airlines stopped requiring the commercial multi. And so we kind of shifted along with that to say that it was a bit optional, since the commercial multi can be a bit more expensive. Those are usually flown in double engine planes, hence the multi-engine, which can cost a lot more money to fly. Bria, is that different for you? Same. Oh.
Hold on. I was going to say that's the same for us. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
The guest part of this, guys, is actually learning about other schools' programs too.
Yeah. It's awesome for us too. Yeah. So for those who have just joined, I'm just going to remind you, we're just keeping it kind of casual. We want to direct our discussion today towards any questions you might have about aviation programs or degrees or anything like that. So if you want to shoot us questions, you can unmute yourself and ask, because we're kind of a small group today, or you can shoot them to us in the chat or do the raise hand option as well. So any of those things are great ways to go.
And the question that we were just answering is, what is the best pathway? I'm kind of really summarizing the question, but what is the best pathway to becoming a commercial airline pilot? So we're just talking about the different ratings that are involved. That said, I always refer to university in your 4-year degree program as point A. Commercial airline pilot is going to be point C. That said, one of the reasons that commercial flight is such a confusing degree and pathway is, what do you do for that point B? So there are so many different options, and that's kind of the best part. So universities such as ours will kind of help guide students in the best way to working with a commercial airline. That said, to explain what I mean a little bit, generally speaking, there is something called restricted ATP. So the FAA regulates all things at certain stratospheric levels, and they have said in order to become a commercial airline pilot, you must have 1,500 hours of flights. So one of the best benefits of both of our universities is that we qualify for restricted ATP. There are only a handful of schools in the nation that still qualify for restricted ATP. That said, there are also different levels of restricted ATP, but both of our schools qualify for 1,000 hours, which is the lowest university level for restricted ATP. That's a 500-hour difference, which is flying pretty regularly for about 2 years of your life. If any of you guys have started flying, you don't get to round up to the nearest half hour, the nearest hour, it is to the minute. So 500 hours is a pretty big deal. Also, the lesser known thing around restricted ATP is that not only does it cut down to 1,000 hours, but it also lets you take the ATP exam, which is what you need to take to become a commercial airline pilot, at the age of 21 instead of 23. So that's a big deal. You may be able to control how much you're flying, but you definitely cannot control how quickly you age or how slowly you age once you pass that point. That said, so what I mean by that is, and so going back to the restricted ATP and that point B that I was mentioning, there really is no school that's going to have you anywhere close to 1,000 hours by the time you graduate. So that is why university is point B. So on average, with the students that I talk to, I have students that are anywhere from 260 hours all the way up to 450 hours. Really kind of depends on what you're doing during the summer and that type of thing. So there are a lot of options in aviation around those hours. That said, some pilots will opt to do cargo. You're flying things and not people. They have lower hour restrictions. So you can do that till you hit 1,000 hours. There are also smaller airlines such as Hawaiian. You guys know those planes where you kind of have to dip your head in order to get your seat. Even my 5'3" self has to I actually hit my head the other day. But that said, the smaller planes like that, the regional ones, those ones also have lower hour requirements. So again, you could start flying with that. There are also going to be pathway programs that a lot of universities will have that'll fast track you to becoming a first officer. Let's see, other ones. You could also go private when you're flying private. That's actually the way I'd love to go. In fact, Netflix recruits from our campus. Most people know that Google has their own fleet. Not as many people know that Netflix has their own fleet. So I want to go fly around all the famous people. So again, lots of different pathways, but the point is you want to make sure you know what resources the different universities out there have to help guide you. And of course, one of the most common ones is the CFI pathway. So once you finish your ratings, that was the last one that I mentioned, that's your certified flight instructor. So a lot of flight students will then become instructors themselves to get up to 1,000 hours. And for us, I know with our CFIs, their contracts are constantly getting bought out by various different entities, including American and Delta. Those are the two most recent ones that I know of. And so that way they're just going and jumping on with the commercial pilot program there. Yeah, anything else you want to, can you tell I've said that a couple times?
I was going to say that was exact. You said all the things I was going to say, because I was going to say a lot of our students become CFIs, and so they will work as a certified flight instructor in order to get those 1,000 hours. And lots of times those students that do that can do that in their junior or senior year. And so they're able to mentor younger students, and they're getting those as they're gaining their degree. Do you feel like that happens for you as well, that as they're in their last couple of years of their aviation school that they're becoming a CFI 1? That's, I mean, so that's, yeah,
for us, it really depends on the students. So we do have a fair amount that do that, but not all of them do. Some of them join the pathway programs that we have. Actually, one of the more common ones, and I don't know if this is just an Arizona thing. I'd be curious if it's the Utah thing. And I don't actually know if it's as common on our Florida campus either. But that said, it is really entertaining to me, the number of students that actually go out to, especially during summer, to collect hours. They'll work as skydiving pilots. A lot of them, they'll go up and down kind of all day long, getting paid a very reasonable hourly rate. That said, and then they can also skydive for free. That's apparently a thing that pilots do. So the ones that I know that are closer to that 400, 450, it's because they all did the skydiving thing in the summers.
Yeah, that's something I'd never heard of it, but that's really cool.
You might have to start asking some of your flight students.
Yeah,
I can see that being a thing in Utah
now.
too.
Yeah, I'll have to ask, because that's amazing. Do we have any other questions right now? Anybody? Tina, do you want to, should we go into the different avenues of aviation, talking, because we kind of touched on the fact that we do flight, but we also do maintenance. We also do, there's a couple different avenues that you can go. Do you want to, should we talk about those different ways that you can get an aviation degree, be involved in aviation, but definitely, not everyone necessarily will be a pilot. Should we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, to start, I would definitely say there are a huge amount of avenues to aviation. It doesn't necessarily need to be that commercial pilot, as we mentioned earlier. That said, one of the things I usually recommend to students too, um, unfortunately, we do have some students that are really passionate about flying, but for one reason or another might not be able to receive the specific medical that they do need. So if you have any concerns at all about qualifying for your medical, you can always go to the FAA website and you can find a doctor that is near you that is able to sign off on the medical certificate that you need in order to start flying. For any of you that have not yet started flying, I always recommend students to do this. I do recommend the type 1, which is what you need to do the commercial. That way you're aware of any possible things that you should be concerned of. And because I do work with students that unfortunately are not able to obtain their medical, I do talk with students about other ways to become involved. That said, Bria, do you want to start off talking about some of the degrees that you guys offer?
Yeah, so I was gonna just say, so we have rotorcraft, which is like helicopter pilot, and then fixed wing, which is an airline pilot. But then we also have maintenance management. So that's gonna be your building the planes, you're maintaining the planes. That's one avenue to do it. Another one is that we have that's newer is unmanned aerial vehicles. And so for those students who are passionate about flight, who are excited about flight, but for one reason or another, maybe can't get their medical, like Tina was saying, it's another way to get something into the air that's in your hands. And then we also have aviation management, which would be the management side of like airport management and that kind of thing. So those are kind of our typical degree pathways. And those are all kind of a little similar, but a little bit different. Obviously, some of those classes are going to overlap, but some of them, then you'll be a little more specialized in other ways as well. So yeah, do you want to go ahead, Tina?
So we definitely have our aviation business administration, ABA. If you guys haven't learned already, everything in flight is acronyms. It's just so much easier that way, but very, very confusing when you're first getting into it. So with ABA, we actually have a flight track as well. So if you wanted to actually focus a little bit more on the business side, but then really beef up your resume by being able to kind of throw down and be like, hey, I also have my pilot ratings. Definitely gives you a huge advantage in the industry, to say the least. So you could do that and you would start flying with the university as well. We also have aviation maintenance on our Florida campus. And then for those of you that may have joined us a little bit later, I had talked about the industrial and organizational psychology. So our university actually has the largest crash site of any university in the nation. And so having that access to do kind of that crash scene investigation, if that's kind of an interest to you and why people make the choices they do in those moments. I always use the example of Sully. If you guys are familiar with him, a famous pilot that landed in the canal in New York, saved a bunch of lives. Obviously, he made a good life choice and he got a Tom Hanks movie out of it. That said, he actually went on to get a master's in this degree, and this is what he does now. He does accident investigation. So again, like why people make those choices. If he had made the wrong choice for whatever reason, say he had a newborn baby at home and he hadn't been getting very much sleep, so he wasn't able to kind of think as quickly as needed to make that positive choice. Obviously, that situation would have ended in a much different manner, unfortunately. So again, that's another aspect. Of course, building the planes, we have our aeronautical engineering pathway. We have our aero track there. So, and then, gosh, I know I'm missing one. Oh, the cyber aspect of it. So this is actually becoming a really big minor for pilots too. So of course, protecting the planes. So obviously all the airports are really gathering up all of the cyber security degrees right now. In addition to that, I'm seeing it become one of the most popular minors for pilots. Again, I think it's something that kind of helps set you apart a little bit. God forbid anything happens in the air, where you might be able to have a little bit more of an advanced training to be able to proactively make a positive difference. Oh, and air traffic control. Gosh, I forgot that one too. And I put the, oh gosh, and I put the airport right behind me too. So we shifted our language. We just redesigned our degree. We now call it air traffic management. Since air traffic control is a very challenging field to get into with the exam, as well as an age cutoff that not as many people are as aware of. So we wanted to incorporate a lot more different things. So we actually do incorporate some unmanned aircraft systems, as well as aviation business and a couple of other things as well, to make sure that you're qualified for a variety of different degrees if you don't end up with the air traffic control part. I think I got them all.
Okay, the other thing I forgot to mention, I'm glad that you said, oh, air traffic control, because I thought, oh, I forgot to mention, we also have technical degrees as well. And so they're going to be those certificates that that you can get that are less than 4 years. They're going to be two-year degree certificates. And one of the cool things about our university is that those actually stack into 4 years. So let's say you do your 2-year certificate and then you feel like, oh, actually, I want to do a 4-year degree. That's going to stack. Whereas typically a technical education isn't going to stack for a bachelor's degree. You have to start back at the beginning. But because we're a 4-year university that also offers technical education, you can take those technical degrees or get a technical certificate or associate's degree or whatever, and then it will stack onto a 4-year degree in maintenance management or aviation management or something like that. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that as well, because I know a lot of students are looking at technical education right now. And so that's just a plug. Okay, what other questions? Tina, do you feel like there are other things we need to cover for these students that are like crucial to cover for aviation?
Well, I know we mentioned earlier when you and I were talking, one of the great things about both of our universities, we were kind of doing a quick comparison. So definitely one of the best things with our universities, and a question that I always encourage students to ask when they're looking at flight schools, is to ask about weather patterns and how many clear sky days per year do the universities have. Learning to fly to me is just like learning a language. If you start to go too long without doing it, you start to forget things. You have to repeat lessons, which gets more expensive, which the parents don't always love. That said, in regards to that, with both of our locations, so Embry-Riddle has a location in both northern Arizona, which is a little bit more similar to climate in Colorado. Depending on exactly where you are, we may not get as much snow. So if you guys are primarily in the Aspen area, you win. That said, our student season passes for skiing are only $89, which is equivalent to about a day fee though. I'm just saying.
That's amazing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Our students spend all the winters on the ski slopes. And then our Florida campus, if you guys are really tired of the snow like I was when I moved from New England to Texas, but both of those campuses have over 320 clear sky days per year. And that is why we chose those locations, so that you guys could get as much flight time as possible. And I know that Utah has very similar climates as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have great weather for flying as well. So.
So if you have just joined us, we are keeping this a little bit casual today because we are kind of a small group. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute. You can post it in the chat, either open to everybody or direct to one of us, or you can, if you feel the need to go classroom style, if you click on participants next to your name, you can raise your hand. Other questions you guys have? Bria, knowing this about your school, do you want to talk about your flight team a little bit? No. And the benefits of that? Okay, sorry.
I don't know.
I know you have a flight team.
I had like a really yeah. I feel very unprepared for this presentation. If any of you have ever had like a presentation in high school that you were like, realized Sunday night that you had to give it Monday morning, I'm feeling a little bit of that today. So I know some, but not a ton. Tina might know more about my flight team.
You guys have a good flight team. You guys are usually in the top. So
there you go.
That said, I do usually like to bring up flight team. I'm so sorry, Bria. I usually like to bring up the flight team because especially parents like this one, but by joining a flight team, and you can do this with any degree. So you don't have to be in the commercial pilot flight which for us is called aeronautical science. That actually might be a good clarifier, Bria, if yours is called something different. So ours is aeronautical science. Fixed wing would be the 4-year track that students join for commercial pilot. That said, any degree is able to try out for our flight team because there are a variety of different aspects of it, including submitting flight plans and that type of stuff. But the flight teams are really cool. Like they have to go compete and they have to do things like land a plane on a very straight line that is quite narrow. They have to do things like drop something out of a window and get it into a bucket below them. So the flight teams are a lot of precision flying. But one of the things that I mentioned that parents in particular really do love when they hear about our flight team is it is free. I will repeat that, free flight hours. Because when you are competing with, when you're practicing with the team, they actually have their own planes as well. So when you're practicing with the teams, those are hours that you get to fly that you do not have to pay for. So I always like to mention that this flight is expensive enough. So anytime you can say free is beneficial. Yes, it looks like Andrea has a question.
For the flight team, is it usually really competitive to join?
It is, at least for us, I won't sugarcoat that, but you can try out even as a freshman. So I know that they do, for us, they actually have like a written exam that they take to kind of get a basis of your understanding of flight to start with. So if you don't make it your freshman year, you can always try out again. I do know freshmen that make it. In fact, we had the co-president of our flight team worked in our office. So I got to know quite a bit about our flight teams, to say the least. But that said, they really don't care how much flight experience you're coming in with. If you are looking to fly for them as opposed to some other aspects of it, they're really looking to get an idea of your knowledge. So when you start your PPL, you also do something called ground school. The ground school is where a lot of that knowledge, or I personally refer to it as a science of flight because that's the class that I had to take. So those are the types of things that they want to see and gauge your understanding for, as well as just see your passion for flying. Does that help, or do you have any more specific questions around that?
Oh, no, that helped. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
What's the social life at?
Oh, well, go ahead, Bowden. What was that?
What's the social life at Embry-Riddle like?
So we have 2 campuses, so they are very different. So the Florida campus is definitely going to be a bit more of that beach life. They're 5 minutes from the beach. It's a lot more go, 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 a lot more late night. Assuming you're somewhere in the Aspen area, the Prescott campus is going to be a lot more similar to that vibe. Huge outdoor culture. So people tend to be in bed a bit earlier. Things definitely shut down closer to like 9 o'clock at night, that type of thing. So the cultures are going to be very different. That said, on both of our campuses, you know, we have the 2 most popular clubs are both skydiving and Dungeons and Dragons. So being a smaller campus, there is definitely a wide variety of types at our campus as well. Bria, did you want to talk a little bit about your culture?
Yeah, so we're kind of we're a residential campus, but I was going to say we're like a total college town. So nestled in the mountains, we have tons of outdoor activities. We have 16 NCAA Division I teams. So like sports, outdoors, we also have a lot of cultural stuff that happens in town. So there's a music festival that happens at the end of every summer. There's a film festival that happens every spring. So kind of like, I mean, you're gonna run your gamut, right? Like of all the different things, but I would say we're a really social campus. We have one of the biggest Halloween parties in the state of, well, it is the biggest Halloween party in the state of Utah, but like in the Western, awesome. I would venture to say like Western US, because it is gigantic. We have students that come from Idaho, students that come from Wyoming, just people come from all over the place to come to the Howl. Obviously not, the last 2 years have been the exception because, you know, with the last 2 years, we've had to restrict it to students on campus, but yeah, it's awesome. I would say the culture is like very student oriented of the whole town is very student oriented. So yeah, but you are going to run the gamut again, we're like 45 minutes from one of our ski resorts and an hour and a half from 6 others. So yeah, you're 5 minutes from the mountains.
I've gotten stuck in your football traffic before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then there's football traffic.
I used to stay in the Marriott over there for a while, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yep, okay,
Yeah.
no, this needs to change.
Yeah, yeah.
That said, yeah, just to further up, because Halloween is like my favorite and I'm always traveling. And on our campus, like, so obviously we're a much smaller campus, but that said, and a little bit nerdier at times, but we do like the most epic game of zombie apocalypse tag, which generally lasts like 8 to 9 hours. And we didn't do it last year, obviously, since things were a little bit regulated on sizes. But the year before that, they had about 1,200 faculty, staff, and students involved, and it went on for 9 hours. And I was so sad that I wasn't there. So you get a little glow stick, and that's how you know when you've been infected.
That sounds so awesome.
I'm sharing that because
Super
you guys
cool.
should totally do that at your campus too.
Yeah, it would be rad. I know, I should take that back to student government.
Yes.
So, okay, what other questions do we have?
Andrew, I think you started to ask a question about the same time as Bowden. Did you still have a question?
Oh, yeah. This is kind of like off topic, but like what kind of student would you guys like, or what kind of student would not be a good fit for your school? Like, what do you think about that?
That's a tough one. I feel like if you are, I don't know, I feel like we find all kinds of students that fit at Utah State, probably because we have so many different programs. But if we're talking specifically aviation, I mean, you have to be pretty driven as a student. You have to know what you want to do. You have to be willing to get in there and do the hard work and get it done, and understand that like you've got to be first in line to get those classes and getting those hours in. So I guess a driven student would be an important quality for our students in aviation specifically. But we do run the gamut of all kinds of different students because again, we are a state university, and so our degrees, I mean, we have 156 programs. So, I mean, you're gonna run a really wide gamut there. But as far as aviation goes, I feel like students, I mean, and typically this is, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, Tina, but I feel like this is what we get with our aviation students is that they know what they want to do. They're driven, they've got a plan. They're very specific in the direction that they want to take. And I think that that's really important as an aviation student because you are spending extra money on those flight hours. And so you don't want to, you know, get 2 years into your flight hours, like Tina said, and say like, actually, I don't want to be a pilot. And so it is really important that you know what you want to do, that you're, you know, really driven in the direction that you're taking and the focus of your education. So Tina, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's actually a perfect lead in too. And then I did get a question directed to me, and I think that'll probably be the last question we have time for. That said, yeah, for us, our programs for all of our degrees are a little bit different because you are specific to your degree the very first week as a freshman. So that's why I keep saying, like, go do a discovery plate, start working on your PPL, because you want to make sure that that is something that you're passionate about. You know, go do a summer program for engineering to make sure it's something you're passionate about. So if you want to be building the planes, you know, flying the planes, you know, try to get involved with that beforehand so you know it's a fit for you. Because for our university, if you get there and that's not something, maybe it's not what you thought it was, it involved too much calculus, or I get that for engineering all the time. You know, we don't exactly have English or US history to switch into as a degree program. So, you know, for us, it definitely helps if you have some type of background for the degree you're applying for, so we can tell that you are interested and passionate about that, whether it's being involved in Civil Air Patrol, having done a summer program. Gosh, I had a student who applied for software engineering and he had written an app already at the age of 16 for Lockheed Martin. That is not normal, by the way. That said, that is definitely a good way to show your passion for something. So just as an example, you know, like it's good to show that you have some type of passion. And maybe you live somewhere where that's not a possibility. You can't be involved in robotics programs, or you haven't been able to fly yet for one reason or another. Just using personal essays or personal statements in order to share why you're passionate about that, just so that we get a better sense of you as well. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Thank you for that. That actually really helped.
Of course. So the question I got was around scholarships and aviation. So Bria, do you want to start by talking about the scholarships that your school offers?
Sure. So our scholarships are a little bit multifaceted. So we have obviously our merit-based scholarships that are just based on your GPA, ACT, or SAT scores. And those are, if you apply by our deadline, they're guaranteed. And I'd love to, give you more information on that. But those ones are going to cover your tuition. And then as far as flight scholarships go, they're a little bit different because they're going to be more as you get into the program. And then, sorry, I have to get there. Give me just a second. I'm very good. I really do know what I'm talking about, even though it doesn't feel like it. So we have a partnership with SkyWest, and they do a $15,000 tuition reimbursement program with us. And then additionally, we'll have other scholarships that are program specific, but those would be after you're in your program. So your sophomore year, typically you would apply for aviation specific scholarships. And then the SkyWest program, they do tuition reimbursement, and then you get to have a guaranteed interview at the end of the program, and that is based on an application. So yeah, those are the ones that I'm super familiar with. I'm sure that there are other ones, but I do have a very limited knowledge. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and typically you guys are paired with a financial aid advisor after you've been accepted somewhere. So the financial aid advisors might have additional information for you. That said, I can tell you guys that we are both merit-based as well as need-based. So those ones are not going to be aviation specific, but as long as you have at least a 3.0 or above GPA, you will get some type of merit scholarship. Merit scholarships in general mean that the university does not care how much or how little your family makes. It's just based off of your merit, and your merit consists of things such as your GPA. That said, the need-based comes from a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad form referred to as FAFSA. Personally, I think it's the worst part of senior year. I just realized I'm being recorded as I say that. That said, I just opened up yesterday for any seniors that we have with you. So congratulations. Upside, they did cut out about 32 questions this year. So hopefully it won't be as bad. For juniors that might be with us, they're cutting out even more. So that said, with the FAFSA, that information is shared with universities, usually January 1st. So you'll get full financial aid packages, usually end of January, beginning of February. That said, there is a boat ton of money that is being shared right now within aviation. There is a huge demand for it. The most recent Boeing report had over 800,000 pilots needed in the next couple of years. So this is when you guys thank your parents for the time in which you were born, because there's so much money being thrown at anybody in aviation right now. We do have a separate Boeing scholarship. You do not get to apply for it. Boeing decides who receives it each year. That said, we also have Women of Excellence scholarships. As long as you are a female and have at least a 3.5 GPA, you will automatically receive that one. In addition to that, on our website, and Bria, this is useful for you as well, on our website, underneath scholarships and financial aid, there is a whole list of degrees specific to aviation. They are not specific to Embry-Riddle. They are just specific to aviation. So you guys are totally welcome to go check that out as well. There's also on Amazon, it costs about $19 last time I looked. It is called the Giant Scholarship Book, which is apt because it's about this thick. There will be a scholarship listed for everything you could possibly imagine and things you never imagined existed on there. That said, I definitely think it's a worthwhile investment. So you will find aviation scholarships listed in there as well as like one brown eye, one blue eye, pat your tubby, rub your head. I'm exaggerating slightly on that one, I think. I don't know what's in there anymore. So those are all different avenues, but at the end of the day, flight is definitely an expensive degree. But the other aspect of it, which I always like to share with students, as well as parents, of course, is that there are a lot of sign-on bonuses right now. I have an alumni in Denver who flies for SkyWest. He was flying for Hawaiian Airlines, one of those smaller regional planes I mentioned before. When he hit his 1,000 hours, he shifts it over to SkyWest as a first officer. He got $100,000 sign-on bonus. So that paid off most of the loans that he had accumulated around flight. So those are also important things to be aware of. I don't ever foresee the major companies like United or American or Southwest ever offering those, but the smaller ones like Piedmont, SkyWest, Hawaiian, Alaskan, they're going to get more and more desperate for pilots. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening, and it's already happening. Anything else you wanted to answer there, Bree, or add in? I'm first generation myself, so I go a little above and beyond with the scholarship stuff.
No, I think it's fantastic. I did remember, so there's one other thing. So we have a need-based scholarship that is not related to your FAFSA. So the FAFSA typically looks at your familial contribution and how much your family can contribute to your education. Our need-based scholarship is based on your estimated cost of attendance. And so as an out-of-state student, your cost is going to be more than an in-state student. As someone who has to live on campus because you're out of state, your cost is going to be more. And so we take those factors into consideration much more than what we think that your family is going to be able to contribute, because we recognize that even though on paper it looks like your family should be able to contribute X, Y, or Z, that's almost never how it works. And so we do have that need-based scholarship, and you have to fill out the FAFSA so that we have that information, but we base it on your estimated cost of attendance rather than your family contribution. But yeah, I will just echo what Tina said, that like aviation is huge right now. And so people are begging you to come work for them. And so often there are so many opportunities for you to be able to pay for your school, maybe not at the time, but afterwards as you get those signing bonuses as well. So scholarships are huge, but also remember that like you're entering an industry that's really competitive and searching for people. So yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope some of that was helpful. If you have additional questions, or if you have specific questions for either of us, we're going to be jumping into our breakouts, our individual breakouts. So we will jump off and end this now so that we can be there for those. But thank you guys again so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Well, Keaton said thank you.
Oh, good. Good job.
That was interesting.
You're fantastic.
I mean,
I'm like, oh, you know all the things.
it's our, well, at Daytona, it's our biggest degree. On the Prescott campus, it's our second biggest degree. And outside in Colorado and Utah, they're the two that I get asked the most about. I try not to talk about it in Utah because frankly, with how high demand it is, like with the price difference, like I'm like, why would you go out of state?
Right.
You know,
Totally.
it's so high demand right now. If you're still getting the 4-year degree, you're qualifying for restricted ATP, but you pay the in-state tuition.
Yeah.
So I talk about our other degrees that have nothing to do with flight when I'm in Utah.
Right.
So sincerely, like, and I know that you have a good flight team, or I would never have brought that up, because I've seen the rankings before. So you guys are usually always in top 10.
Yeah,
you might want to, because that's a huge selling point for you. And forgive me, because UVU is the other one that has the flight program, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good differentiator, though, to know who has the better flight team.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I know both of you guys have decent flight teams, of course, and I did not throw down that ours is in the Hall of Fame.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it, because I was like, I guarantee her flight team's better, but she's being so nice and not saying that.
Yeah, we just hit our 18th regional win. We're the winningest flight team in the nation.
Yes,
so it's something that I do like to talk about, because a lot of people don't realize that it's free flight hours.
Yeah, that is huge.
So knowing that you have a flight team, so it's beneficial if you can find out if your flight team has its own planes.
Yeah, which we do. We have our own. Yeah.
But just for the flight team.
For the flight
So-
team specifically?
Yeah, because our flight team has 2 of their own planes, and the only ones that use those planes are the flight team.
Oh, well, I don't know that question. I'm gonna have to ask.
It's a
figure
question
out.
that I do get asked occasionally because it gives you an advantage if you're flying the same plane that you're competing.
Right, right.
But
okay,
obviously, every plane has its own little nuances. Like one
Right.
might list a little bit more to the left than the other one, and you have to
Right.
start correcting for that. So,
right.
but those are great things to throw down, especially knowing your competition with UVU. That said, I have to go drive to the office now because I have to go pack up as I'm like doing this. But
Okay,
I
well,
don't.
thank you. Good luck.
Oh, you too.
Yeah, have
So
a good
interesting.
one.
It'll be interesting to see if anybody shows up for the 1
I
o'clock
don't
or
think
2
they
o'clock
will.
version of it.
I
I
don't
meant
think
as far as us go, because I'm like, I gotta be at the airport. I'm not gonna be
Right.
on there.
I'm like, did you notice that I was like writing down notes as fast as I could when you were talking? Because I was like, I'm gonna be on my own for this one. So I guess I'm gonna have to like say all these things that Tina's saying.
You're totally
So-
welcome to reach out anytime. Like I've obviously, like I literally regurgitate everything that I've been told by various CFIs and such over the years.
Well, but still super cool. So
Yeah, wait, I gotta show you something. So, I meant to actually take off my video. Because this was happening the whole time and I felt like I kept looking away. And I was like, I need to pay attention. Okay, come here. Okay. And my cat. I kept getting cat fur on me because I was petting him. You can see my suitcase by the door now.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That was
Oh my
good.
gosh. But yes, this is my adorable little wingman.
So cute. So cute. So
All right.
cute.
Well, enjoy your
All
next session.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye-bye.